Hi, this is Privateer Station, and today we're bringing you day 216, done in the form of conversations between Olexiy Arestovich, Lieutenant Colonel Advisor to the Office of the President of Ukraine, and Mark Feygin, Russian opposition journalist. Enjoy. Dear friends, glad to see you all on Tuesday, September 27th. It is 2 minutes past 10 in Kiev, day 216 with Olexiy Arestovich. Glad to see you, Olexiy. Good evening to your house as well. To start with, I need to say that yesterday's stream did not happen because of me. My plane did not land on time, it was delayed, so Olexiy, our glorious friend, has nothing to do with that. He's got other times when he doesn't show up, but that was not on his. This was on me. Alright, we have 150,000 people watching us live. Over 20 click the like button. Thank you for waiting for these 2 days. Appreciate you guys, and for waiting a couple days instead of one. The usual ask, please share, subscribe, click the like button to Mark Feigin account, to Olexiy Arestovich account. Mark's account is over 1.8 million already. And of course, if you are watching that in English, subscribe to the Privateer Station. Links to that are under the video. Click the like button and you'll get news about all of the new streams that we make. Alright, since we missed a couple days, let's analyze the situation. Many things happened, on the front. We're showing the map now, the usual deep state map. Let's go to Liman, up in the northeast. There, some evil tongues from the Russian side. We are not saying anything. Our command, I think, only confirmed Redkadup, the occupation, and a couple other locations that we took. But evil tongues on the enemy side are saying that whereas Yampol on this map, it's at 6 p.m. Right where the green zone ends, where the Ukraine zone ends, it's to the right and a little lower than Liman. So from the point of view of Russians, there are some troops doing them harm, shooting them, and they have to hold or withdraw. Not sure if it's our guys, we have not confirmed anything, but it does appear that Liman starts to fall into something that looks like cattle or operative surrounding of the group. And also, if to follow deeper with if to believe all these Russian publics and forums and stuff, that if Ukraine closes the lid on this one, there may be a destruction similar to the Kharkov, where they lost everything, and it might also have the same jump to the east potential as the Kharkov counteroffensive did. Also, let's go up north on this map. Our troops took Kupinsk-Uzlovaya, an important railroad junction, and we can see where that protrusion comes to. You don't need to be too smart military-wise when you see that tongue going down from Kupinsk, and what is the risk for Svatova. You see in the middle of the map, about 9 o'clock, that small protrusion following the road. If that continues following the road, one can only think what may happen with that fortified line along the water reservoir. So overall, their perspectives in that part of the map are pretty sad and grim. Let's also address this. There are some messages with videos and other data that the first mobilized from Russia have already appeared on the front. I don't know if you know it, but do you think we can trust these things? Oh, I think some of them are already here on the front. So you think in 5 days they gathered them and then threw them to the front in just 5 days from the mobilized? Well, yeah. You've seen the video of the guy who got captured today. He is a mobilized one. Well, so for our friends, just 3 days after the beginning of mobilization, we had from 10 to 20,000 of them on our borders. Is that the intel stating that? No, Mark, I'm not sharing any unofficial intel data, but 10 to 20,000, and evil sources are confirming that yes, there is about that amount already here. They already are restocking those groups that have been beaten up in the recent fighting, and there was no training. They literally just shoved them right in to fill the holes in the front line. And part of them is already dead, some of them are captured. The previous record was 5 days for the volunteer from being gathered in the middle of Russia to being captured here in Ukraine. Right now it's been, very short time. There is no preparation. What about if you're mobilized, they're supposed to be trained, right? No, there'll be no training, Mark. The goal for them is right now to literally restock the front line. It is the most logical from the military standpoint because it has some logic there. Whenever you have a cadre corps of a detachment, you can add another 60% of less qualified people around them, hoping that the cadre will train them how to survive and how to fight. But their destiny overall as humans is going to be sad because they're not prepared. They're not trained to do anything. So their lifespan will be very short. So they came, also, another question, they came with a lot of phones. Do you think the phones were taken away from them? Because these people are not too smart. They're like stumps, as we say, for the dogs to pee on. Because they'll be using them to take pictures, to call, to text, so they'll light up the map and you'll see where they are, you'll provide additional targeting for enemy artillery. Mark, I don't know. I know there was an order to take the phones away from them, but I have no idea if it was successful. Alright, so let's imagine some of them still have phones and still call their friends and relatives. Do you think we can track the intercepts and anything, maybe more videos coming from them, where they are, what they do? It's a little early, Mark. I don't think we captured any of those intercepts. Maybe we did, but I haven't seen them yet. But you can listen to the cadre communications, and they're not happy with the mobilized people. What do they say? They say it'll be worse. If they bring them here, that means that they'll stuff them to our detachments and then likely will tell us to go attack. Because we, out of 1,500, have maybe 50 left. Today, our intel published an intercept when the guy is saying that, we only have 50 left out of 1,500, and his wife is happily telling him that there are more mobilized people coming, and then he's basically sighing and saying, well, then you probably will never see me again, because I know what they'll do. He's also continuing that I'll pray to God to be just wounded, and she says she'll go to church to pray for him. Okay, got it. Interesting. Let's continue to Bakhmut. What's happening there? You see the red arrows, they're trying to attack, although in one of the parts of that front we pushed back. I cannot disclose the exact name of the settlement, since we haven't yet disclosed it publicly, but in essence they're using the same scheme they used for Severodonetsk and Lysychansk. They're concentrating some artillery and trying to overwhelm our positions with that. And one needs to understand that's the only capability they have. It's only about 30 kilometers of front where they are active this way. And we already pushed back in a couple places even there. Alright, if you look down south, roughly Gorlovka and Marinka, towards Donetsk. They also barely move, just pretend move some tactical motions. In Zaporozhye, it's very quiet. There is some regrouping behind the front lines, but the front itself is rather quiet. On Kherson area, I would formulate it as Ukraine is realizing their advantage in long-range artillery. So we're polishing them with HIMARS, with artillery, with aviation, wearing them out and destroying their positions until they start running and toppling. There are some positions that they try to fortify, and we are taking some places, but I cannot literally outline that we captured something major there. No, not yet. We're just grinding them down. Out of notable things, we destroyed a barge with 3 panzers, their defense systems from the air, and they were carrying 3 of them on the barge and got hit. Interesting. So they transport now stuff with the barges across the river. All right, I have a next question. In your opinion, we're not asking to share insider information. For example, they bring those mobilized people. How much can that save or remedy their current difficult situation? Why am I asking this? Because bridges will not appear because they mobilized people. Antonov Bridge and Kakhovskaya Dam, they're not in the condition to provide any significant communication between the left bank and the right bank. These bridges will not appear out of nothing. What will that restocking, refilling of the 30 battalion tactical groups that we thought were there? Correct me, I don't know how many of them are there now. What if they add another 10 or 20 groups to that? What can it change? Can they start offensive towards Nikolaev? Why am I asking? Because some people in Russia are saying, well, we got a ton of people, we can overwhelm the front, and that might change things. There is some position, and some people are somewhat afraid of that eventuality. Well, Mark, position needs to be based on something. These people who are proponents of that position, do they explain how will these 20 battalion groups move? What equipment will they have? How will they be armed? And who will be providing logistics? I don't know any power that can bring them to the other bank and how they will be supported. Maybe on the barge. Well, how many on the barges can you bring? All the waterways are controlled by our artillery. It doesn't mean that we hit every single barge, but we are definitely taking a hefty toll on their communication. And we're predominantly hitting the ones that are carrying loads to the right bank. And we keep shelling the bridges. Yesterday we worked on the remnants of Antonov once again, so I don't believe into that apocalyptic scenario. Frankly, even if they somehow manage to transfer them to the right bank, they would still need to support them. So right now they basically need 4,000 tons of supplies daily, and they can only supply 1,500, roughly. So for about 2-3 weeks, their group already lives on a diminished ration. They have serious issues with all kinds of logistic supply. All right, so imagine they added another 10 battalion groups there, so their problems with logistics just grew by 30%. And it's not even about adding more people there, it's about supplying the ones that you already have on that side. And there are no other new ways to cross the river besides the ones they already have some. They're using, and we are weakening their little lifelines they try to send to support the right bank. So essentially, you're telling me that without solving the matter of logistics and supplies, the quantity in numbers story doesn't really change the situation. Yeah, it doesn't give much. It only makes it worse. We already had that experience near Kiev, where they came in huge numbers, and these numbers were their downfall. Because forest roads, they basically got stuck, got hit, beaten up, they crawled around for a month and then left. One needs to know how to use numerical advantage. It's a very difficult advantage to use. It may only seem like that if in chess, if you have more figures, you win. But in chess, the figures only require your attention. In life, they also want to eat, they want to fuel their vehicles, they want more ammo, they want to prepare for the winter. So, Mark, this is not even a serious scenario. Yeah, we're just answering, people are asking questions in chat and other means, and we're trying to answer. So yeah, this is what we took upon ourselves to try to answer these questions. I'm trying to be honest, at the same time I still have my attitude to these scenarios. To me, they seem very strange. We have over 300,000 watching us, over 100,000 clicked the like button. We've been live for about 16 minutes, and we need to make sure that you guys share links to that stream. Ask your friends to subscribe. Make sure that those who need to see that, if you have family members, especially in Russia right now, when the war is basically knocking on the door of each house. However cliche that sounds with that mobilization, we do hope that you'll finally stop consuming that stuff from TV, that they're shitting into your head from the Russian television, and switch to using the online resources. Subscribe to Feigin Live, to Olexiy Arestovych, and to the privateer station if you are listening or watching to that in English. And make sure those people who are getting mobilized, they see these streams, they see this data. They might be a little better informed regarding their future destiny. So do not forget that. Now about the statements. Speaking of mobilization, here is the map of the regional battalions in Russia. This is their new initiative. Weird names: Tiger on the far east in the Primorsky region, General Korf in the Khabarovsk region, Botur in Yakutia. So tell us more about that. The idea is simple. They want to create 62 detachments throughout the country. Is it a battalion group? About the level of battalion. But let's see what it is. 4 of them are artillery, 2 tanks, 2 communication, 2 logistics, 1 medical, 1 minesweeping, 1 repairs, 1 sniper, and 45 motorized infantry battalions. What do we get at the end? An army corps. So, when they failed to create an army corps for each of their major 4 or 5 military groups, military areas of the country, they failed. They could only gather 1 out of 4, and this is the other way to approach the same target. Basically involve everybody, smear everybody with blood, and create a new corps. I don't know what they'll call it, National Corps or Second Corps, whatever. And worth noting, Moscow did not create their battalion. It means that they're gathering the volunteers. By the way, this is not demobilization. This is a volunteer effort. And in case of a difficult situation or some internal civil warfare, region will not be able to use their own battalion, because these detachments, they're not self-propelled, so to say, self-sufficient. They need to exist within a part of a bigger system. So that was the idea, and they're still working on that. Interesting. And yeah, they keep following with this initiative together with the current mobilization. So right now they announced mobilization. It's not partial, they take everybody, right? Yeah, they'll add mobilized to that and to that initiative too, and they'll probably just order them to go do things. Volunteer initiative was not too effective. So the only hope for them was that if local administrations will take responsibility for fitting them with clothes, supplies, medications. We already have seen a few videos, right, where the instructor is telling them to get some pads, some tampons to use as hemostatic. I appreciate our nation. We already got a ton of memes in this regard about that video. So, for example, this one, the size of tampon versus the size of a bullet. I don't know if indeed they're trying to use tampon to the expanding nature of tampon to stick into the wound and use that as hemostatic. Yeah, that's sad. A couple words about the life expectancy. For those who were lucky and who were evacuated from the battlefield in Russian army, it's about 16 hours till they see the hospital. Everybody who fought knows that for a heavy, serious wound, if you do not help them in 40 minutes, he will die. If a medium-type wound, medium-class wound is not stabilized in 40 minutes, he turns into a heavy wounded. If you get a light wound, if you do not do anything within another hour and a half, he has a chance to turn into a medium and so on. So at best, you need maybe 4 hours. You have maybe 4 hours to save somebody, even with light wounds. Imagine what happens to them when the gap is 16 hours. And that was when the cadre army fought. When they had hospitals, medics, evacuation vehicles. Now the mobilized come without that infrastructure. What happens to you? Evacuation was random. They were lacking it, and it was very bloody with the death at the end. So that instructor, whoever she was telling the right things. You have to rely upon yourself. There is nobody to help you, because Russian army leaves most of their wounded out in the fields, officers and soldiers. Technically, it gets reflected in the numbers. It is very far from 1 dead to 3 wounded, the classic number, and to 1 to 9 in the modern armies. Shoigu said that they bring back 90% of people who were hospitalized with wounds. That's a bullshit data, because it's only 10% of all the wounded that actually make it to the hospital. So overall, we're tracking something similar to 6 out of 9 have no chances to survive after being wounded on the front. So for you, perspective is grim. Let's look at the mobilization topic from another angle. We've been live for 23 minutes, so we do have some time. They already are publishing that Kherson region voted, and 97.5 voted to join Russian Federation out of 100%. We understand that this is all bogus numbers. Consequences. What consequences can be after such an action? And we already see some reaction from Britain, because, right, our Western allies said that there'll be sanctions, there'll be consequences to annexation. What do you think will happen? European Union said today that they'll turn 4 remaining big Russian banks from SWIFT system. I don't know how many of them are remaining on that line total, but 4 more will be disconnected, the big ones. Yermak Commission suggested to turn it off for all the Russian banks back in April, but we're crawling as we are, I guess, and we're adding 4 more banks to that. So that annexation essentially affords to launch another level of sanctions in Ukraine against Russia by European Union. I suspect, if not by volume, but at least by nomenclature, we'll have a better supply from NATO countries. You'll also be surprised. That's an interesting number. From Zaporozhye, they counted 93.11 voting for joining Russian Federation. It's funny numbers. Also, my contacts from Moscow are saying that, from the financial industry, are saying that people started to withdraw money from the banks. So I have to make a point. Go, take your money, withdraw your money from the banks. After all these measures, if Russia will get hurt in the financial sphere, they will fight for your money. Kremlin will fight for the money you keep in the banks. They'll use this money. So if you don't take your money from this Sberbank and Shmerbank, whatever, take everything. This is the only logical appeal at this point. Then later you'll say thanks. And those who didn't will curse us. Okay, let's briefly touch upon another thing. That so-called underwater explosion in the Northern Sea of the Russian gas pipe. I suspect it may be Russian machination to provide additional pressure for blackmail on Europe before winter. How do you see that? And what do you think will happen with the gas pipes that go across the territory of Ukraine from Russia to European Union? Well, today Gazprom is suing Naftogaz, and what's interesting, the market in Europe almost didn't react to those three explosions. Why? Because Europe is stocked with gas. At least right now, all the storage facilities are full to the brim. Consumers are learning how to save gas and not use it too much, and then industry also trying to switch gears to other supplies. And also, today there is another line that opened from Norway to Poland, about 10 billion cubes. That's a big line, and for me that's an interesting coincidence. When one gas line opened and a couple others closed. Interesting. Just occurred. Interesting coincidence. Okay. Interesting. By the way, Scholz is visiting Middle East, talking to kings dynasties of the Persian Gulf. So I think Europe will be all right. In terms of gas, what will happen with Ukraine? Pipeline, the one that goes across our territory, it's another potential resource for escalation. We understand that Russian side may use it at some point, or Ukrainian, but for now nobody touches it because it is a safety issue. We understand why we are not touching it, because that gas goes to our partners in Europe. But I think Russia with that could be showing that they can see we can close the door, we can open the door, we can close the valve, we can open the valve. And I think maybe Russia was playing that game here. Oh yeah, I'm just reading the numbers as they pour in. LNR, DNR, they're almost there. They're at 90-something%. Why not to draw 100? There is no romantic here. Yeah, Mark, I agree. They should just draw 146 and be happy, right? Agreed. Let's go back to the nuclear blackmail that received new level of articulation, and we need to return to that topic again. We discussed it before, but there have been a few statements by that fella in Russia who is nearing 70 years old, and some reaction from the Western politicians to his statement. And Jack Sullivan statement, we did not have a stream on Sunday, but he did confirm that in private he did relay that Moscow will face catastrophic consequences if they use nuclear arms on the front, and also appeals from Kiev upon the Western politicians to create a system to address the nuclear side of that question, and perhaps also call upon the Security Council of the United Nations to discuss nuclear threat by Russian Federation. So also today, Medvedev, that little idiot, handful useful idiot for Putin, was shaking somebody else's nuclear PP because he doesn't have his own, but he's allowed to threaten with it. So he was telling more stories on different media how scary Russian nukes are. Do you think there is any change right now unfolding, some new scenario that they're going to use nukes to try to defend Kherson, Zaporozhye, and DNR, LNR? Yeah, this is blackmail, this is raising stakes and attempt to provide a stronger position in possible discussions, or in a possible discussion between them and the collective West. They injected that into media, that Russian troops in Kherson and in Crimea got special chemical defense suits and radiation defense accessories. So yeah, I think this is a special injection in the media. So I ask upon everybody who's slightly panicking from our viewers, please do not. The probability of use of any nuke exists, but it is very low. And if the international community will display a stern reaction to Moscow threats, the possibility of use of such weapon remains very low. The problem is that they're trying to scare the country and blackmail the country that actually gave them some of these nukes back in the day, whom they promised to provide territorial security. And another aspect, that if Russia uses nukes on the front line, it does break and disrupt a ton of different agreements in the world. So this is a much more serious question. And after the initial use of such weapon on the front, it's very difficult to project how it will affect the whole world, because the balance of power and many things change. It sort of creates a situation free for all, where different countries can also use these tools, these mechanisms, if they remain unanswered, to resolve their issues and their beef with different territories. So the goal of politician is to try to use that as a resource and more like a possible threat or possible option, but not to actual use on the front, because that basically changes too many things on the chessboard. And the countries, key countries that are nuclear countries in the world, United States, France, Britain, India, China, I wouldn't mention Israel here, but I think the key, as we discussed back in the West, back in the spring, the key would be the alliance between India and China in this matter. If India and China take certain position, they will be key decision makers in this eventuality, because India and China, first of all, have way more population. Russia will run out of populace way faster and sooner than any of those countries. And they have their concerns about the use of nuclear weapons. So, as a discussion, as a possible attempt to provide pressure, it sort of works to a degree for Russia. Now, in terms of real application, real use of these weapons on the front, it's a bit different from nil. It was maybe 0.5%, maybe now it's 1%, 1.5%, but the world is pushing back and concentrating on all the measures to prevent that scenario. And if they manage to somehow use the tactical, the consequences will be very rapid and very stern. So can we prognosticate that in case of such eventuality, NATO will just come to the territory of Ukraine and actively partake in the conflict to stop everything? Well, we don't have any official statements besides Hodges. He's a big value figure, right? He's not a government leader, but he's a serious figure, right? Yeah, he did say that, for example, they can destroy and eliminate Black Sea Fleet for Russia. Why? What would that do? That would create a huge hole in the system of Russian defense, because if there is no anti-air defense, there is no border defense in case the fleet disappears. because the country has a system of defense, right? If you break a hole in that system that covers about 2,000 kilometers, that's a huge risk. That's a huge situation because things can pour in. Could be jets, could be anything, could be missiles. So imagine you have a serious door and then all of a sudden somebody breaks the door, force breaks the door, and still standing out there and asking you, do you want us to come in? Because we can proceed if you stop misbehaving. So that's what they're threatening now. I would not exclude the possibility after, if Russia uses any kind of nuke on the battlefront against the country who actually voluntarily gave up its nukes to Russia, got the guarantees. This is a very bad smelling story. So I absolutely see that NATO can do something like that, and they can destroy, they can create a breach in the Russian defense. Another thing, they also will likely do that without using nukes. They'll use conventional missiles. So to use nukes, that's maybe a little too much of an escalation, but in response to a nuclear attack by Russia, they could use conventional weapons and destroy the whole Black Sea Fleet, for example. Because in this case, it's not even a question. We did not use nukes, right? The problem for Russia is that in case of a mass response by NATO allies, 3,500 Tomahawks, maybe 2,500, 3 waves of that. Imagine that, or 2,500 jets in the air. That's a very grim perspective for any Russian defense system. So I think there is enough deterrent for them. Okay, let's talk about the Crimean Bridge. We have a new merge, but I still want to ask before we go there. Now they're jumping for joy, they're happily voting among themselves to annex the newly acquired territories from Ukraine, and now nobody will shoot us, nobody will attack Crimean Bridge, nobody will attack Kherson. It's all ours now. Marquis de Carabas owns that land, and we have papers to prove. And look, we have trains, it is Russia, you will not hit Russia. So what do you think may happen with Crimean Bridge? Mark, we have nothing to hit Crimean Bridge with. I will be giving the same answer. First. Second, what we can acquire from new supplies cannot change the situation with attacking the bridge. Oh, people say different things. Imagine we got ATACMS. It's a heavy missile. It's not HIMARS that goes real fast. ATACMS is bigger and slower, so it can be intercepted. HIMARS is much faster. It goes up and then goes down with a supersonic speed. Hyper is 5+. It's a bit lower, but still. So for the Crimean Bridge, I don't think there is a threat to that. Maybe if you shoot a tactical nuke at it, or 300 Tomahawks, or 50, then you may cause some serious damage. But what is not a Crimean Bridge, whatever they claim is their territory, we don't care. We consider this referendum to be legally nil, and none of their ultimatums, including nuclear, will stop us from liberating our own territory. And we have stated that many times, and we continue. Okay, so whom are they doing the referendum for? Then if... Okay, forget the Crimean Bridge, just look at the other territories. And at the end of September, early October, they may claim that these are territories of Russia. But at the same time, the shelling continues, the fighting continues, the war continues. There were questions to some territories near Belgorod and Kursk, again, maybe Crimea. But here, after your statement, after saying it's Russian territory, nothing changes, right? Whom are they addressing that to? To the West? Probably to the West, because they cannot really provide their security militarily, right? They're doing mobilization to try to acquire the capability to defend these territories. And for by referendum, they cover the information political field. because they're trying to scare everybody that we'll defend these territories with all the means we have. And that people start thinking, will they use nukes or not? But we don't know how they defend their current territories. They suck at it. And they were hoping that we'll get afraid, we'll start negotiating, or the West will get afraid and will pressure us into negotiating. But it appears that nobody really cares at this point. We're just laughing, pissing them off. The West seems to be indifferent, basically saying, are you sure you want to use that? Because if you will use that, we'll have to respond. Think twice. So that's the current structure and response. We're almost 40 minutes live. We have 541,000 watching us live. Is that a record? No, that's not a record yet. We had 553 at some point, right? Yeah, now it's 541. And over 160,000 people clicked the like button. So our usual request, regardless of all these near record numbers, please share links to that stream. We'll have a few more minutes, maybe people will come join or watch it later when it's available. And click the likes button, that helps to give it, to show it to more people, so that more people can view it later and it gets more often recommended by YouTube. President just said something. He's partaking in Security Council of United Nations as a guest, and he asked them to continue supporting Ukraine. He made a statement that these referendums do not change anything, and that after Russia acknowledges the results of that referendum, he will have nothing to talk with Putin about, because with that, Putin basically cuts off any possible negotiation window. Okay, so he clarified that. Pretty straightforward. Last topic of today, another important one, mobilization in Russia. More protests happening, especially Dagestan, and all the chaos happening there. Of course, that is incited by that mobilization act. A lot of people are fleeing the country across the border to Georgia, Kazakhstan, some to Mongolia, some fly to Turkey, Istanbul, and so on. I get messages, a lot of, some of my friends, not close friends, but some acquaintances are sending me messages. It's literal hell on the roads. Those who are trying to cross borders, taxi drivers offer a ride for thousands of dollars. You can also buy a bicycle for several hundred to expedite staying in line. Yeah, I've been into Georgia. Yeah, you've been there in Verkhny Lars. So, what do you think about these protests? What do these people do? They mobilize their wives, children. Very simple answer, avoid mobilization. Yeah, there are some weird videos online about young people breaking their legs to not go. I would not suggest that method, but there are other methods to avoid mobilization. I would suggest, if you are going for that sort of route, follow, what's his last name? Zinin? Yeah, that guy. So probably the best way is not just to mutilate yourself, but follow his glorious example. And, you know, you serve your motherland too. The guy he deserves respect, right? He made a phrase that is worthy to become a symbol of that movement. He actually turned before shooting. The commissar, he turned to people in the room and said, nobody goes anywhere except for me, you'll go home. And nobody goes anywhere except for me and the commissar. And this should be ingrained in golden letters. That's a good message. You know, I have a school, rhetoric school, philosophic, psychological rhetoric school. I'm definitely going to be used his phrase as a good example of explaining his position and his next actions in one very capable phrase. Follow the examples of Dagestan and Chechnya also. Chechnya was excluded from draft. Dagestan, they're saying, is on the verge of joining Chechnya in that. Officially, 100%. I don't think they will reinstate the draft there. They put a pause until the end of the week. I don't think they're reinstating that. So, two territories already fought for their right. It makes a bit easier for the rest to do the same. Tatarstan will be interesting to see how they react to that. I also like the statement by an ex-president of Mongolia who said that they'll accept and adopt all of the close groups to Mongolian population from Russian territory. They're brothers and sisters, and they will accept them and adopt them. You know, all that Putin's regime starts to remind more and more of a light smoke or light fog in autumn that is about to disperse. Because that idea that they'll probably end up drafting about 1 or 2 million people overall, probably 2 more million will flee the country. And all of a sudden you withdraw 4 million out of your economy. That's a bad story. Or, you know, that other story with the federal judge who called to the military commissar drafting point after getting a writ of that he has to show up, and he says, I'm actually a federal judge, and got a response that, no, we checked, you are a grenadier, you're an operator of a grenade launcher. So yeah, that's a story. And then the video with Peskov's son, who is avoiding the draft and mobilization. So that's a story that Russian people need to understand. The country is trying to conduct a colonial war. Then when from mistakes of Moscow, national groups and different regions will suffer. They were trying to kill Dagestan since 2014 in the Ukraine front. By any means, they were throwing Dagestan detachments into the hottest parts. And starting since February this year, Dagestan actually lost probably most than other regions. So now they're revolting against that. And if any region in Russia doesn't want to become the second Dagestan or third Buryatia, it's simple. Go to the streets, take it to the streets like Dagestan, like Chechnya. You will provide for your own safety. I can only imagine what happens if Tatarstan explodes with protests. Not a single Tatar citizen or a person living there will go to the front. And given the influence of Tatarstan throughout Russia, Moscow will not use the force. So that'll be 3. And if 3 figured a way out of mobilization, then it becomes much easier for number 5, number 6, number 7 to fall off that mobilization machine. I think collective protest is still a way to go, especially in the national republics, because there are a lot of factors which Central Command just doesn't want to deal with. They're afraid that there'll be an explosion of national and other political and other issues, and it's a good way for Bashkiria, Yakutia, Tuva, and I think Russian people's ethnic Russians should also not be falling behind, because if these national groups withdraw from mobilization effort, you will have to carry the burden, because part of your men will go to step in for Dagestan people, for Chechnya people, and that will continue. Okay, so we continue our action. We call it with the phrase of Ruslan Zinin, nobody is going nowhere. And as usual, we advise you at 7 p.m. come to your regional administrations. This is exactly what was going in Dagestan. Relatives and potentially mobilizable audience were gathering. Same as we did with this channel. We start at the bottom and eventually we'll get to the point where people will start going to these squares. It may be a little late for some of the relatives who will be returning in body bags, but there will be a time when it will be the decision-making point. Once again, banks, withdraw your money. Take all your money from Russian banks. Take money away. That's the only way for you to save stuff. You want to say something? Remember that the first dead among mobilized already exist. We already have first prisoners from mobilized. We didn't need months. We had 3 days. That's it. That's one. And second, we already addressed men. I want to address Russian women. Dear Russian women of all nationalities, the real power that can stop it is you. Take an example of Dagestan. Because the power never knows what to do with angry women. They know how to disperse men, but when it's a mostly female protest, the real one, the loud one, for the future of their kids and husbands, it is very difficult to stop a crowd of angry women who do not want to do something. It is probably 20 times more difficult to do anything with that group than with a group of angry men. Imagine any attempt to beat you or to arrest you. That pulls men to rise up for you as well. Because if women are getting beaten, men will come out to defend you. This is a strong resource, please use it. And keep in mind, nobody will be paid anything for this war. 9 out of 10 bodies, 9 out of 10 killed at this war do not come back. And if you're missing, you're not getting reimbursed. And with the amount of people they're gathering now, they will not be even able to pay for all these people they trying to mobilize. And it's unreal to pay the same amount of money as they were paying initially to the contractors. So you'll lose a member of your family, you'll lose a bread maker, and you'll get nothing in return. You'll get orphans and the necessity to cover for both alone in the next part of your life. Such a gift from Putin. It's easy to break it. Mass protest. And you already have 2 examples, Chechnya and Dagestan. Continue. Okay, the last thing for today. Tomorrow we have a stream, right? On Wednesday? Yes, we do. As we promised, we helped prisoners from Azovstal. This is Mikhail Vershinin. He was that tough guy on the left and came back 40 kilos lighter from Russian prison. We sent money, I talked to him today, and here in the middle is Svyatoslav Yermonov. He is also in the hospital. We sent money to him as well. We are looking for Mariana Mamonova. This is the girl who was pregnant while captured by Russians, and I think she gave birth yesterday. A day before yesterday, yes, she gave birth to a daughter. So we need to find Mariana Mamonova to send our support to her from our charity fund. And that fund that is funded by the store. We actually got new design. Fear and Hatred in Vegas style. That's an interesting design where Crimean Bridge disappears as a result of a visit by 2 people, me and Arestovych. I think Arestovich looks awesome with a pipe and a lighter. And here's another one. Oh yeah, that's a good picture. I like the shirts and the glasses suit me. Okay, so we're preparing more designs in style of Ricky Morty. Will be Ricky and Morty. Just in a few days it will be finished and released in our merch store. So find a way to buy a t-shirt like that. It's a fun addition to your collection and it helps us to help victims of this war. And we need to find Mariana, please help us. Over 500,000, a little less, watching us. At maximum we had 542. We've been live for 53 minutes. Tried to cover for 2 days without. Tomorrow we have stream as usual with Olexiy, and I'll be doing separate streams here. We'll be talking about Ruslan Zinin and what to do. Do not miss. See you tomorrow. Goodbye, Olexiy.